Hi guys, we've got an E30 320 four-door here that we have purchased. It is completely empty, no glass, no anything. Literally a set of bottle tops, a steering wheel just about attached, and a pedal box, which is what we're after here. So what we're going to be doing on this vehicle, we are going to be taking out the pedal box. You probably won't get such a good view of the pedal box because most often than not, the donor car isn't as badly stripped. But the accelerator pedal on an auto will stay on the car, and you will take this section out here, which will include the clutch and the brake pedal, which is bolted in at the top there, a series of springs, the cylinder that goes through the bulkhead there. You will have to possibly punch that out. We'll have a look at what we find on the automatic variant to fit this all in. Once that's done, a couple of other things. Obviously, you will be needing the gear selector. There will be some wiring to do. I can't tell you through this snake's nest, but when we get to the car that's receiving the donation, we'll be able to tell you about how we're going to adjust the wiring so that the rear brake lights, etc., reverse lights are all operational through the manual system. Now, a better view from here, and this is a great view, you won't get these views always. That there is a cylinder coming through the firewall, and basically you'll see that clutch line which comes across here. It's the lower one, runs down, and it actually comes out underneath behind the brake booster there, and that's it there in your picture right there, running back down to the gearbox. So we will probably, if we can, disconnect it just under that joint if we can, and remove the hard line from behind and transport it across to the other car. And then obviously everything underneath to do with the gearbox we'll come to later. But in terms of everything except the gearbox, in terms of your external parts, there's not a great deal to do. So just to remind you, you've got your fluid going what appears to be underneath to the cylinder. You've got the line, you've got a hose, you've got a pedal box, and you've got a gear selector. And there's the gear selector there, great view. And as we take parts off the car, we'll take photos. We'll try and advise you where we can help you out, what problems you might come across. Okay, so as you can see, so far we've started to remove everything under here. This part has been detached so that we can take the frame out. I don't really want to go madly over this. It's quite a straightforward job. Just trying to cover every nut and bolt and what have you. So in case you can't see what's holding it on, this clip might be able to help you. These two, it may be a bit tricky if you haven't got the right tooling. I'd suggest 13 extension all the way down here so you're clear of everything to undo that, and a ring spanner on there. Don't use the ratcheting variety because they've got quite a meaty head which won't get in between that gap. But I'm sure you'll figure that out, straightforward. Okay, as for taking this brake booster shaft off, what we've done, we've opted to take it off this end because it's a donor car for now. When we put it back together, things may change, but essentially if you just look under here, this here is held by this pin and clip. So once you release the slider, you can pop the clip out the top and it will release this shaft so you can take it out all in one go across the vehicle. So starting off the E30 manual conversion, we've just disconnected the exhaust. We're going to be removing this silver heat shield. Once this is taken off, we'll be able to see the prop shaft, which you can just see there, or also known as a drive shaft. We're going to be taking off the rubber guibo bush, or donut as it's called. So far, exhaust off. We're going to be taking this shield off now. Then disconnecting the guibo joints. The battery's disconnected. We'll be taking the starter motor bolts off next, disconnecting these oil pipes to the gearbox fluid pipes to the gearbox. And then when we take this bracket off, you'll see later in the video that allows the gearbox to sort of hang a little, which will give us some access to some of the bolts. We will show you some more videos as we go throughout this process and keep you up to date. So at this point here, we've just supported the gearbox on the sump quite crudely. Yes, you can use bits of wood and bits and bobs, but I won't be using this auto box anymore, and I won't be selling it on because it's not in great condition. So we've supported the gearbox here. We are going to take out this bracket across here, which will allow the gearbox to hang a bit, and it would also give me access to the back of the nuts holding the guibo and prop shaft on, and then we'll be able to hang the prop shaft down with everything out of the way of the gearbox. And we literally have a starter motor or two bolts to remove, and we can start taking the gearbox bolts off. Okay, so the bracket is now out of the way, and as you can see, the gearbox is supported on this jack here, and it now, if I do lower it, will allow the gearbox to lower a bit. Okay, we're going to keep it under support for now while I just take the guibo bushing out and drop the prop shaft. You may need to get, I think these are 13s, just loosen these a bit so these can slide out of these two little gaps here, and then once these are out the way, you can get on the back with a spanner and undo it. I'm sure if you've got the right spanner, you can do it with it in play, but it needs to come off anyway, so I've taken it all out. You can just see I've got a 13mm ratcheting spanner on top of it, and you can see it's already moving now. I don't think I need to go any more, and that will literally, he says, slide out. And we get the other side out, and now you can see we've got a bit of clearance to get onto these nuts and bolts on the back. Right, okay, so what we're going to do is get our 17mm spanner onto the back of this, get our ratchet on here, and work each nut of the guibo push out, and we'll be able to drop the prop shaft out the way. It's best to have it in neutral, then you can rotate the prop shaft while you're doing it. Rotate the shaft, get our spanner onto the next nut, our ratchet onto here, and loosen the next bolt. Again, rotating the shaft, spanner onto the next one, loosen the next bolt. Right, we're at the rear of the prop shaft here. Before we remove the 6 bolts holding the guibo bush and prop shaft or drive shaft to the gearbox, you need to take these rear 4 nuts out that connect the prop to the differential. Same way you will see later in the video, you'll be doing this. You probably want it in park whilst you take each nut and loosen each nut, then take it out of park, rotate, open the next nut, and do that 4 times till those nuts are out. Okay guys, we've taken out the prop shaft, as you can see, all the way across to the back. We've got here the prop with all the bolts, the carrier, center bush, everything, and the donut, also known as the guibo, which is sitting here. That's in great nick because we only replaced that a short while back. So far, gearbox bracket with the 2 bushes and all the bolts, prop shaft, 4 nuts, 2 nuts in the middle for the bearing and carrier, 6 for the guibo and for the join on the rear of the gearbox. Exhaust is slightly hanging. Gearbox is now also slightly hanging. With the aid of the tool, we can actually lower it to our advantage so we can begin getting everything off. We are closer. We're now going to hit this 30mm nut, and also that, I'm going to guess what, 19. Take these 2 off so that they're separate from the gearbox, and then we can probably from here get all of our connectors and linkages and everything off from the bottom here, and then we can start taking off the gearbox bolts. Not to forget, we still have a starter motor to remove. Clearly, lockdowns and weekends off have caused me to lose my size guessing capability. It's actually a 22. I said 19 earlier. I was 100 million miles off. So a 22 spanner, loosen that nut, and also let that portion drain. There shouldn't be much in it. And pretty much everything's going to be disconnected off your auto box by now. Right, this portion here that you can see these 4 bolts on, 2 on this near side here, and 2 should be on that side up there, is a shield. Once you remove that, it will make it a lot easier to get to your torque converter and flywheel bolts. So we're going to just remove that cover, which we will show you in just a second. Right, there you are, those 4 bolts are out. You'll find the cover still won't move, and that's because you've got 1, 2, 3, and that's all. You've got 3 other bolts on this front here that need to come off to take it out. So just to show you, 1, 2, 3 torques, and that cover should come free. My mistake, guys, I did say to you 3 bolts earlier, but there is 1 just hidden up in there. I'm going to zoom out so you can see where it is. And just hidden up over there. You need to take that out to get this lower section off. So now with the cover out of the way, as you can see, 1 bolt there, we will be, sooner or later, if we can get to the last remaining starter bolt, which is hidden away out of sight there, we can pull the starter out of the gearbox, and then we can start loosening the remaining gearbox bolts, and that gearbox can drop out. Please do remember, there are still linkages to disconnect down the side here. I haven't, and an electronic supply. There will also be 1 more fluid supply line, but I figure I'm not too concerned. I'll just take off some of these clips, and maybe this clip here, and just disconnect that shaft, leaving the rest hanging from the top, and that harness plug there. I think we're nearly there, guys. Okay, so following the one that we've taken off there, the one that we've taken off here, which goes up to this point here, and we've taken off this, which goes to the dipstick. We've got 1 more, which is on this line here, which is hidden up there. You need to just undo that and drop that down. So there it is, right up there, and there's your angle to see where it is. Okay, so now all our lines have been removed, including the one up there, the one here, and this one here. Now you'll see that these lines will run all the way through, through that little black bracket there to the rad. You won't be needing those anymore if you are converting to a manual. So you can either remove them for the rad, let the oil drain out. You can upgrade your rad to a manual rad, which will be slightly larger because it will use that space for the cooling sinks, and obviously attract more air through it and cooling. But what we're going to do for now is just take this bracket off and hang the pipes from here so they're out of our way when it comes to dropping the gearbox. We're just doing the final bits of this job now. You can obviously see the frayed accelerator cable, which will be changed out, but we're more interested in this cable, which is the gearbox cable for the kickdown. We need to get this removed because it's still attached to the side of the gearbox, or into the gearbox. So if we take off these 2 10mm here and drop the entire bracket down, it will be out of the way, so that when the gearbox drops, it's not tugging on that bracket. And then we've got to get into that snake's nest down there and remove the starter. Okay guys, with the starter motor out, we've got 1 reasonably easy to reach bolt here, and then there is 1 that you can just see the socket on the bolt there, that you've got to come with a long shaft and a wobbly down to the back of the gearbox. But as long as you get a union joint just behind your socket there, it gives you that little angle that you need. So just looking above this lower bolt we showed you earlier, and we showed you 1 high up on the other side that required extensions and wobblies. You will also require the same to get to that top one up there, which obviously you can run over and down the side of the gearbox there. Okay, to remove the flywheel bolts, you can get onto the bolt head with your 17. You will need to, in some ways, somehow just get onto the flywheel teeth and hold the flywheel in place, while you undo each nut, and then you can rotate the flywheel with the same screwdriver using this motion to bring your nut round and undo. I believe there's 3 of those bolts. I keep calling them nuts. 3 of those bolts when you turn it. Right, as you can see, you'll be greeted by these 8 bolts on the flywheel, or the starter gear. Once you take those off, you'll be able to remove the flywheel and obviously inspect your crankshaft rear oil seal, and take off the necessary bits before putting everything back on the car. We also have to tackle the gear selector in the car yet, and the pedal box. Here we are looking at the back of the gearbox. We've got a lot of oil and stuff in the way. If you are here, and like mine's quite built up at the top, being a turbocharged system, it's very hard to get to this little coolant flange pipe. So it's worthwhile undoing the 2 little bolts on there, changing the seal inside there. We'll be cleaning all this down. The crankshaft rear oil seal does appear to be okay, but I think as a preventative measure, we'll be whacking that out and changing that as well. And then, like I said, we'll be lowering the vehicle now and taking out our center console to start removing the gear selector, and clearing up some space underneath the dash to start removing the pedal box. But most of the stripping, I would say the heavy stripping on this vehicle, is now complete. There's some remedial works. Then we've got to strip our donor car, get the parts ready for that, which will all be on the floor around the vehicle. Obviously no auto box. Some of these components over here that we have that we've taken off won't be going back, some will, but the main thing is the gearbox is out and we are ready to start stripping the pedals and ancillary parts. Okay, for this next video, I'm just going to show you that underneath, down in the footwell, obviously it's the right hand drive, there's a little clip that goes in there. There are 2 bolts or screws up and under, one under here and one underneath here. There will be 2 in the ashtray, which obviously my air ride system's in the way, and I've got gauges and things, so it's a lot harder for myself. I even had a C-class armrest, which is somewhere over there, so that's all had to come out of here. So we've made some space. I'm not going to bother pulling it all out because I've got to detach my gauge. I know it's only a couple of screws, but we're there now anyway and it will come out. So essentially, once you get through, disconnect all your window locks and window bits and bobs. You'll have 2 hex 10s located. He says he needs to get the old torch on it. Give me a second. One my ratchet is sitting on, and one is just under that white plug in that corner. A little collar that fits over here that you just pull out and disconnect your lines, and hopefully once I remove those 2 bolts, the selector should come out. Okay, you'll see from the earlier video, when we removed the pedal box, we had nothing in the dash area, so it was a lot easier to see. I'm hoping you're going to pick this up. 1 bolt for the pedal box is located, if you can see my ratchet on the far left there. You'll have 1 located in the middle here. You'll have 1 located, as you can see, this top one here. And then there is 1 just on this side here. They're the 4 back ones. And then there are 2 up here. But that will loosen it from the back. You still have the brake servo shaft there running across, which you'll have to tease out. And the 2 top bolts. And then that will lower everything down. And then we'll work with the remaining cable. Just for the record, there is another hidden bolt in that corner there, and I imagine 1 down here. There's also a plate that goes up into the corner with those 2 threads that you can see hanging out that need to come out too. Right guys, you'll see that smaller hole at the bottom there where this piece has been punched out of, a small metal piece. Just needs a flat blunt object, and if you give it a little whack, it will fall out the other side, and that's where your master cylinder will go through. As we can see, the servo bar is still here, and now we're going to put in the pedal set. We've left the accelerator in play. There's a small clip that goes on this side that looks like this, that you just got to pull off, which allows your throttle pedal to move off, and now we can get the pedal box in.